Welcome to the 11 Warriors show for Tuesday, December 31st, 2024. Chris Lauterbach, I'm Jason Priestis. Chris, we're here on a Tuesday because we have a massive game on tap tomorrow. Typically do these on a Friday, but with the game being Wednesday this week, and I'm sure we'll get into that more. But let's start this with some New Year's resolutions. Do you have any heading into 2025? That's going to be here in less than 24 hours.
Yeah, I never really get too deep into that. I usually start off with just trying to get rid of some of the fat that I've accumulated from Thanksgiving to now, basically, because I just eat like an idiot. There's too many sweets around and that kind of thing. Actually, last Saturday went to a party. We watched a fish webcast, but we had a 64 candy bracket, and we had like a candy face off, basically. So I'm fresh off of that on top of, Christmas Buckeyes and Oreo cookies and, Oreo balls and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, my only resolution is, hey, for the next 6 weeks before I go on vacation, drop, maybe 15 pounds or so.
15 is a tall order for 6 weeks, man. That's
I can do it. I can do it. No problem.
So you went to watch a live stream of Fish and had a 64 team candy bracket?
Yeah. It was, everybody brought some candy and not your favorites. Like a Reese cup wasn't even in it. It was like some international stuff that was there, some stuff I've never had, something called a wagon wheel. Never ever get that if you see it. There was some bad candy in there as well, but I think Take 5 and Score were in one side of the Final Four, and a Fast Break and Sour Patch Watermelon were in the other Final Four. We did blind draw for the seeding, so it created some pretty interesting matchups. But Score Bar ended up coming out on top, which was surprising to me.
I work out a lot, like almost every day, but I still eat terribly. Yeah. So my goal for 25 is to eat better. Because if I can put the two together, you're cooking with gas all of a sudden. But I'll work out a ton and then go to Five Guys, and it's like, what's the point of what I'm doing here? But so I'm just basically in kind of a maintenance state. But if I can eat a little better, pass on pizza or cheeseburgers when I have the urge here and there, and I'm not going to cut them out. I'm not going to be drastic about it, but just be a little smarter. Because if I do, I think that's trouble for. Yeah,
we're getting old, man. We got to make better decisions.
Huge show today. Two best teams in college football square up for an epic Rose Bowl game. How Kirk Herbstreit and Nick Saban galvanized the Ohio State fan base. Jeremiah Smith is a man on a mission, and why it's great to have the nation's best defense. Let's start with this new bounce that Ryan Day's talking about. What do you make of that, man? Ohio State bodies Tennessee 42-7. Day comes out in the days afterwards and says, there's a new bounce in the locker room after that drubbing. Said, quote, "You could feel the confidence in the locker room. We have to make some adjustments like we always do. But there was just a general bounce and confidence coming off the game, having a playoff win under our belt." And I get what he's saying. Do you see that? And what's that mean, I guess, in terms of, what's next?
Yeah, I mean, I think the team really did believe coming into the Tennessee matchup, but I think to see it actually materialize and not just win, but win convincingly and win by kind of showcasing some of those things that helped you lose the Michigan game, like you did the reverse, like your offensive line showed up, your play calling was creative, you took some deep shots, you didn't give up any sacks. It wasn't just that they won 42-17, it's the way that they did. So I think the team believed. I don't think they were just saying that, but believing is one thing, but actually seeing that, oh, look at that, we actually do have a reason to believe kind of thing with such a statement win is only going to create more balance, as Day and some others put it. So yeah, to me, it was just as much about how they won, like the actual mechanics of the victory, not just the scoreboard that probably pumped them up and gave them some more juice heading into tomorrow's matchup.
To me, it's an interesting question because is this something that pushes a team forward and like, man, we played a great game, we can do it again? Or, every team's got one or two games, or every great team has one or two games and everything just goes right. Yeah. And you're like, I hope we didn't burn it. I mean, glad you needed it. You needed to win that game, but at the same time, is it realistic to expect, I guess play calling at a high level the rest of the tournament?
The other thing, just quick on that, I know we don't want to focus too much on Tennessee, but the thing about that game also, besides the play calling and things I mentioned, is that this, even with all that, it was still 21-10 at the half, and Tennessee's getting the ball to start the second half. So it's like, all right, what are you guys going to do now? Kind of like the game could have shifted a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. And instead, the defense forces a 3-and-out, offense gets the ball back, 6 plays, 65 yards, deep shot to Jeremiah for the touchdown. And it was like, okay, basically game over at that point, 28-10 with 9 minutes left in the third, but you felt like that, okay, this team is not gonna let Tennessee back into it. So just another example of just how they won that game, I think, is, you're really hoping could be a springboard if you're a Buckeye fan, because it was just, everybody needed it, right? Fans, players, coaches, everybody needed not just a win, but that kind of win.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. They get a touchdown there. It's 21-17, and everyone's starting to pucker up in the stadium. But Jeremiah, man, two big touchdowns in the first 6 minutes of each half, and those are like baller times to score. How cool was the home crowd? Real quick before we move on, like, I was at the game. It was electric. It was an incredible environment. Plenty of orange there. People saw that on TV. I do want to point out that some of the stuff you saw from reporters or on TV was, that east sideline, which was heavy orange. South stands was scarlet. West stands was mostly scarlet. North was pretty scarlet. So
I think it was a blessing in disguise. I think some of those Ohio State fans are probably ready to turn on Ohio State at the first chance to be able to do so. But when you have that much of a road contingent there, I know you said, hey, maybe not all corners of the stadium. Still, I'd have been 20,000 there, probably somewhere in that ballpark, more than usual. That we can agree on that, right? Yeah. I think that, when they're chanting SEC and Rocky, all this stuff kind of before the game, maybe got those fans to, rally a little bit and be truly ready for the game. And then you throw in the fast. We talked about the fast start being important for a bunch of different reasons, but you immediately get the fan. I'm not trying to say the fans weren't on their side, but you really get them on their side when you jump out. Like you said, you get the ball, you go right down and score, and you're 21-0 in the blink of an eye.
Let's talk about the fan base. What's the state of that fan base? Because we spent some time in the last show heading into the Tennessee game trying to peg the percentage of fans that didn't want Ohio State to be in the CFP. Herb Street, in that Tennessee game, the fourth quarter, the game's out of hand, and he's asked by Fowler how much the big win over Tennessee softened the blow of the loss to Michigan. And Herb Street said, quote, "I can't speak on behalf of the lunatic fringe. I'm not sure how they operate. The lunatic fringe at Ohio State is as powerful as anywhere in the country," which is, I do think there's some people in that fringe. I think Herbie probably makes that out to be bigger than what it actually is. And also powerful as anywhere. They call them assassinations. They're doing coups in Guatemala. How powerful is this lunatic fringe? And it's not quite as big as what he thinks it is. So what were your thoughts on, what he had to say about the fringe?
Yeah, it just feels overcooked to me. I feel like it's just I'm not saying it's not a story to some degree, but it feels just so manufactured. And I want to say manufactured by the media, but that's not true. I feel like it's mostly manufactured by Kirk Herbstreit. I don't understand why he just continues to pick at the scab. I don't know. I guess I don't understand the value of it, because even if you thought the lunatic fringe was 20% or whatever, and kind of like you said, there's no power in that group. There's power in athletic boosters. So if boosters are lunatic fringe, then okay, let's talk about it. If not, I don't know why it really even matters. It's just a thing that he just continues to bring up. I don't know. I don't understand it. I've tried forever. He's done some good things, nice things for 11 Warriors. I don't dislike the guy, but I do not understand the constant being in your feelings about Ohio State fans. I don't know why we're acting like Ohio State fans are so much different than other fan bases of true elite power programs.
Yeah, and as people pointed out, he's talking about Ohio State fans during that broadcast when Tennessee fans literally forced the school not to hire Greg Schiano a few years ago. So it's what are we doing here? They threw mustard on the field.
42-17. Can we celebrate football? Can we celebrate? I don't understand. It's, the whole other topic of just downplaying who's even in the tournament. It's guys, why can't we just focus on the good that is happening here?
Not long after that game, Nick Saban got in on things too. He was on the Pat McAfee show and said, quote, "These Ohio State fans, they've got a psychotic obsession with Michigan and they need to get therapy or something to get it fixed." Went on to say they have a chance to win the national championship, and here you are. Nobody's excited about their opportunity to play because they just lost to Michigan. Some thoughts there. First of all, he just killed any argument they like to have in the South that the Iron Bowl is a better rivalry than the game. It's not even close for many reasons. First of all, Alabama refused to play Auburn for 4 decades in the middle of the century. But he's coming out and saying this. And, if he's talking about the fans who are saying, with a straight face, I'm okay going 1-11 each year as long as that win is over Michigan, then yeah, those fans probably need to get some help or some therapy, because there's no season in which going 1-11, even if that win is over Michigan, is a normal season. That's unacceptable. He's talking about the fans who say, my team lost to Michigan. I don't even want to go to the college football playoff. Yeah, maybe direct some of that towards those fans. But it feels like he just kind of came in to bail Herbie out a little bit. It's kind of how I read that, and just kind of stepped in it further. And what these two have done is kind of just galvanize the fan base. I mean, you got guys out there trying to make lunatic fringe T-shirts now and just leaning into it and saying, yeah, they're passionate. We're a passionate fan base, but you guys are, off the mark as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, Ryan Day, every coach at Ohio State knows what the deal is. I think from Saban's perspective, I know some of it's just hyperbole, and you're talking on a talk show because you're for hours. They're trying to get you on camera to talk about this stuff. But to say that nobody's excited, I mean, that's just he knows that's not true. The overwhelming majority of Ohio State fans are very excited about what's going on. They are focused on trying to, on watching their team try to beat Oregon and hopefully win a national title. Do all those fans, lunatic fringe or otherwise, are they pissed off that Ohio State lost to Michigan again? They absolutely are. I am. But I feel like most fans of all, like, it's okay to say, you don't have to call it moving on if you don't want to, but it's okay to say, like, the next game is tomorrow. Like, that's right. That's what everybody should be focused on. And I think everybody is. So, yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's a narrative that won't die. And maybe that their whole point is this type of stuff where, we're sitting here talking about it for 10 minutes too. I'm just like, gosh, man, there's so much. Herbie's the one I just don't understand the most because there's obviously all that baggage there. It's like, I don't know why you continue to bring this up.
Jeremiah Smith, man, how locked in is that dude right now? It's Tennessee, 6 for 103, 2 massive touchdowns we spoke about earlier. And then, got to talk to him in the run up to the Rose Bowl. And he said he still thinks about that offensive pass interference call from the first Oregon game, quote, probably every day. If you recall, it was 2nd and 10 from the Oregon 28. He's whistled for an OPI on an 8-yard catch. Would have had the ball at the 20 with the winning kick in the works. Instead, it's a 15-yard penalty, push the Bucks back. Went on to say, quote, I think about that call probably every day. It was a crazy call. The DB was holding me. I just cleared his hands. I guess receivers can't be physical in football anymore. I love that. But DBs can hold 10 yards, 15 yards down the field. And Smith went on to say, when the DB is grabbing me, I know how to move now. So he's got some tricks he's picked up in his first season. And dude's a freak from day one, but he's basically a sophomore now.
Yeah.
And has some tricks. And it spoke to the media, I guess it was yesterday. And when they arrived, shortly after arriving for media day, and said, quote, I'm just letting everyone know right now that if you play man Wednesday, we're taking a shot. So, man, his confidence in what he did to Tennessee and what he's been able to do all season, I just love the way he's playing. And you hear Day and the staff and Heartline talk about maturity, his work ethic, his demeanor, and couldn't have asked for a better superstar freshman.
Yeah, because he's got the work ethic to match. This is really the first time we've heard him even be, I don't even think that was outspoken, but remotely outspoken in anything that he's really said, right? As far as confidence in his own game or, we're taking a shot and some of this other stuff. I've never really even heard him talk like that. And I think it's a good thing, not a bad thing. And to your point, I was going to say what you said is I think some of this is that obviously he's confident and he's good, but now he has this whole season basically under his belt. And it does feel like sophomore, like he's even that much more confident because he's got, as good as he was, you still want some snaps, you still want some experience, and he has a season's worth of that now. And he's coming off, just an electric performance. And I'm sure he's, feeling really confident because that game plan worked so well because, Day after they didn't do it against Michigan, they really tried to weaponize Jeremiah Smith like they should every game, certainly every big game, and he's got to be thinking, hey, there's more of that to come. He's going to have another chance to to show out and help his team win, and he'll never say it, but I think some of this stuff he mentioned he was happy for for the Texas kid Colin. His last name's escaping me, but the national freshman of the year. I think some of that's maybe at play too, that he's that guy's still playing football, so is Jeremiah, right? Let's see how this goes. If you were to vote at the end of the season, how would this shake out?
Yeah, for sure. He's just so good, man. So good at what he does. So good at how he goes about doing it and the maturity and everything. And can't wait to see what he does in the Rose Bowl tomorrow. Speaking of, man, he's still a freshman. I know we kind of gave him a sophomore status, but he's still a freshman. He's in a Nike spot, man. The new "I Told You So" commercial showing him running a route against Oregon. And also his sick one-handy on the sideline versus Sparty. He's in that commercial, Jamar Chase, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, CeeDee Lamb, Najee Harris, Ashton Genty, Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel. Really cool to see this because, through the years, this is something that never would have happened prior to NIL. And now the guy's basically, a teenager and he's in a Nike spot already and putting up massive numbers. Can't wait to see what he does tomorrow. Let's get into that game because there's a lot to talk about. And this is the second time we previewed Oregon this season. So I feel like we're going to skip some things. We're not going to go as deep on Dan Lanning, even though we will shout out he has a son named Titan one more time because the world needs to know that and appreciate that. Not going to do the alumni again, even though they've got a pretty good batch out there. But the headline, number 1 Oregon, 13-0 against number 8 Ohio State, 11-2 in the granddaddy of them all. Ducks are the lone unbeaten team in FBS right now. Game day will be there. Ohio State's going to wear their traditional white road uniforms with a Rose Bowl patch, but the helmets are going to feature that rose stripe that they wore against Utah a few years ago when CJ and JSN just absolutely went off and torched the world. 5P kick on ESPN. And, it's a matchup of, if we're being honest, and, I'm completely biased to admit that, but this is the 2 best teams in the field right now. I don't think that's an Ohio State homer take, right?
Yeah, I think it's at least the 2 deepest rosters. If you were looking at the, the stars and in the on-field production, I don't argue that.
2.5 point favorites for the Buckeyes. Opened at 1.5 Ohio State. That makes me a little nervous. I like coming in as the dog with no one believing him. It
surprises me. Not that I set lines, but even when it first came out, I was really surprised that Ohio State was a favorite.
73 degrees for the game. 0% chance of rain. Here's the thing. I've been to a couple Rose Bowls. The weather at the Rose Bowl is always perfect. I have this weird thought about wanting to retire to Pasadena someday because it's like a Granville, Ohio with mountains and just gorgeous weather. Not like one of the weird things I think about is you don't have to buy a grill cover if you live there. I know it's a small thing, but you know how up here, we're always putting the damn covers on the grill when we're done. You got to do that in the Midwest because of our humidity and rain and everything. You don't do it out there. You just leave your grill out and the grill stays clean. I'm like, man, that would be so nice. Ducks coached by Dan Lanning, 35-5 in his 3rd season. Someone compared him to Urban Meyer 2.0, and that kind of stuck with me, man, because he's got some of that intensity, some of that dog in him. I think he's Urban probably with a little better people skills, if we're being honest. But you look back to what they did when they went to Michigan. Did you see where he called timeout, the footage they put out, where he called timeout in the middle of the game and he pointed to the stands because Michigan fans were rolling out, and he called timeout just to tell his team, this is what I told you. This is what I told you. We're going to call timeout. We're going to watch your fans flood out of the stadium. And he did that. And those are some things that Urban Meyer would have done. Hell of a coach, man. We all remember what happened in the first meeting. We'll talk a little bit more of that in a second. Ohio State leads the series 9-2-0. Oregon's won the last 2. It just kind of feels like they lead the series. Last game, Oregon 32, Ohio State 31 in Eugene in October. And looking back at that one, man, that was such an incredible game. Like a lot of people's games of the year. Will Howard played great, but had a mistake at the end that hurt Ohio State. Wasn't able to get a final playoff. Dan Lanning had some trickery and some plays that he whipped out, and Bucks lost the turnover battle 2-1, and still could have made a good argument. I think the cool thing about that game, Chris, and tell me if you agree, is Oregon fans probably think they could have won by more. They're like, hey, we had some missed extra points, we did some dumb stuff, and Ohio State fans think, hey, we should have won that game. And I think both fan bases can make that argument.
Yeah. I can't argue that. I've definitely heard from the Ohio State side stuff that was left on the field. But yeah, if you look at Oregon, they made some mistakes as well. They had the home field advantage in that game, but I don't know how much matters about that the first time, except for they both have film on each other, playing each other to use for this next one. But I don't totally buy into revenge factor or any of that kind of thing. But it's nice to have, I would think the coaches feel like it's pretty nice to have at least seen your opponent.
Yeah, in a 1 point game, that's effectively 0-0. It's like they haven't played before. You know a little bit about what they might do in certain situations. And how they might lean.
That the last drive, if there's 5 more seconds on the clock,
no
ifs
OPI.
and buts, tons of that type of stuff.
Yeah.
The crazy onside kick, they probably don't even try it if not for the Jordan Hancock penalty that lets them kick off from the 50. Because if you don't get an onside kick at your the opponent's 40, that's not such a big problem than if you try it from your own 35 and don't get it.
Yeah, let's talk about, that first half alone had probably 10 just insanely pivotal plays. And start with OSU leading 7-0. They force a punt, they get the ball back. And, we're thinking, hey, they were cooking here. And Judkins, who's never fumbles, gets the ball stripped.
Yeah.
And shortly afterwards, Jordan James had 2 nice runs, and it's 7-6. They botched the extra point, but at that point in time, OSU was leading 5-1 in first downs. They were dominating this game. People forget Ohio State had like 110 rushing yards in the first quarter of that game alone. Like, got off to a great start. That first extra point they botched, how does Lathan Ransom not run that back? I was watching that game again the other day, and I'm like, how do you not score there, bro? That's 2 points that would have totally mattered in that game. So another pivotal play there. Ohio State's third drive, they get the ball back. 3 penalties due to noise on that one drive. That's a good time. Good thing they're not playing at Alton for this one. And then Evan Stewart cooks Burke for 69 yards, drag him for a final 18. Have you seen me watch that play anymore?
Piggyback. Yeah.
I mean, that's a 51-yard catch. He turned into 69 because Burke's like holding on to him, getting pulled for almost 20 yards. 2 plays later, he scored over Burke to cut the lead to 14-12. They had that 15-yard face mask penalty on Hancock you mentioned, and they kick an onside kick, a blast right up the middle. Bounces off of Caleb Downs, who's wearing an unnamed number 48 because Emeka is also on that unit. So he had to get him in a different number. It's wild to look at because like, who is that dude?
Yeah, we were trying to figure out who it was.
There's no nameplate on the guy, but it turned out to be Caleb Downs. And he tried to get out of his way, but hell of a kick. Credit to Oregon for converting that.
Yeah.
Not long after, Trayshawn Holden, the Oregon wide receiver, gets ejected for spitting on Igbinosun. They had to settle for a field goal there to go 15-14. Iggy's like celebrating like he just won the national title when he got the guy kicked out. Cause like, that's like the all of his trash talking work had paid off. Like that's like him hitting a grand slam, like getting a guy tossed, like getting in so far inside their head. Josh Simmons tears his ACL in that first half and leaves the game on a cart. Zen Mahalski comes in. Little did we know at the time, how dire that would be and how unfun that would be. Emeka scores on a nice cross from Will late in the second to make it 21-15 OSU. But then almost immediately, Tez Johnson just burns Burke for a 48-yarder to make it 22-21 at the half. That first half alone, again, 10-12 just plays like, holy cow, I can't believe that happened. Do you think in this one, and we'll get into here in a second, like each side of the ball, but do you think it's going to be just as hectic or more of a traditional game?
Man, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it has to be a little less hectic just from law of averages sake. I mean, how many times you see an onside kick like that way? I mean, onside kick anyway that isn't at the end of a game when a team's in desperation mode, but to see one executed in that manner, I've never seen that before. The legal substitution thing that landing. I mean, just so many wild things. And to your point, really a lot of that was compressed in the first half. I mean, the last drive and whatnot was nuts. But in the second half, I feel like both teams scored 10 points, right? It was 10-10, I think. Yeah.
Settle down.
The first half was just nuts. So I don't know. I want to believe that it'll be a little less chaotic. I know I have it a little less scoring in it.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think it's big. I truly do. I mean, Alton has a reputation of being a tough place to play. Yeah. I remember going into this one thinking like, oh, okay, well, that's cute. It's like an adorable little
I said the same thing. Yeah.
And just because
the enrollment. I mean, what is it? I mean, the not enrollment capacity is like 60,000, 55, something like that.
And you get there and like this place is loud as hell. Like, holy cow. And that's why you see so many good Pac-10, Pac-12 teams lose up there. I mean, how many times did Pete Carroll have juggernauts that would just go to Alton and drop a game? Like it happened all the time. So big deal to not be playing there. I do expect they'll have a nice crowd at the game. But I was at the Trestle game in the Rose Bowl against Oregon, and I don't feel like it was overwhelming Oregon. So they're closer, but Ohio State fans don't need an excuse to get to sunny weather in January. So I expect the fans to do well. When Oregon has the ball, can the Buckeyes get pressure and keep Dylan Gabriel in the pocket? No sacks in that October matchup, just 2 quarterback hurries. And you probably pointed out earlier that the lack of that pressure is why Denzel Burke got toasted all day, because he has to cover double moves that take a long time to develop, and some of the things they were throwing at him. Do you think they can get pressure where they weren't able to get some last time?
Yeah, I'm hopeful that they will be able to. Obviously, I do think that, I mean, everybody knows. I mean, the storyline is after the Oregon game. That's when they, kind of retooled a defense that was already good. They got, kind of retooled some things up front. And since then, we haven't just seen increased production, because we've seen that. If you look at the statistics, there's been more sacks, more tackles for loss, more hurries per game, that type of stuff. But to me, it's how they've done it, right? Whether it's blitz packages or Andy Anders, our beat writer, really focuses on the line. You talk about, twists and stunts, and you didn't see a lot of that in the first, 6 games. I think the last 6 or whatever it is now, you've seen more creativity in how, Ohio State's going about trying to create pressure. And as a result, it is creating pressure. So the thing is with Gabriel, though, like you said, I mean, it's not just about getting pressure. You've got to be disciplined with how you do it, or he's going to burn you with his legs. You've got to maintain some integrity on your, your rush lanes and things like that, or getting pressure is going to come back to bite you. Rushing too far upfield, if you're Sawyer or JT on the outside, if you allow them to step up and run, you're going to pay the price for it. So I wouldn't expect a crazy amount of, sacks or anything different than the first game because of that reason. If you just sell out trying to get pressure, he's going to end up beating you with his legs. But yeah, I do think we're going to see more active, a little bit more effort to get a little bit more effort and success, and making Gabriel a little bit more uncomfortable back there.
Yeah, 24-year-old quarterback. We dealt with this with Stetson Bennett a few years ago. I will vote. I hate old quarterbacks. I think it's a cheat code. I mean, he's played 500 college games. He's seen basically every wrinkle under the sun. I will vote for the next presidential candidate that makes a law that says you have to be 23 or younger to play college quarterback. I will vote for that candidate. I don't care what their other policies are. They get my vote. Are we a believer in late season Jack Sawyer? Seems to be doing that thing again where revs up at the end of the year, man. He was awesome at the end of last season. He was awesome at the end of the season. Almost single-handedly tried to will Ohio State to a win against Michigan. Was fantastic. Did you see him talking trash? Did you see the footage of him talking trash to everyone in orange, basically? Trainers, football players, didn't matter, before the game, and then went out there and delivered against the Volunteers. Are you expecting a big night from him?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that he and JT both will have better games than they did the first time around. Again, though, I think a lot of this is going to be, hey, you got to try to get pressure on the quarterback, but you can't contain on him either. So I think they'll be better. And yeah, I mean, Sawyer, I'm indifferent on the trash. I don't mind it, but I don't really care either way. But he's definitely played very well down the stretch, and you can tell it's he's one that is always, he grew up wanting to be a Buckeye. He's living to be a Buckeye, and he realizes each time he's going out there right now, it could be the last time that he is playing for the Buckeyes. So yeah, I don't see any reason to think he won't have a pretty good game. But Oregon's, they got some tackles too, so it'll be an interesting matchup. I mean, you feeling confident?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it comes down to we kind of touched on it, but I believe the Ohio State defense is better now than when the teams first met.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that secondary, because Burke had the roughest night of his Ohio State career the last time they played in Oregon. And Oregon's got some guys who can catch balls. They've got a really experienced, savvy and moxie-filled quarterback with Gabriel. He threw for 341 and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions in that first matchup. Evan Stewart, Tez Johnson did major damage. Trayshawn Holden got tossed for spitting, but he'll be back. Jim Knowles seems pretty confident that Denzel Burke will respond. Perfect opportunity for a kind of a redemption arc for him. Gave up 8 for 179 and 2 touchdowns in that first one. You with Knowles, do you think Burke responds, or are they going to? I mean, I guess another question is, if you're Dan Lanning, are you going right at Burke right away?
I mean, I don't know that they'll necessarily try to target him right away, or specifically any differently than they before. I think what I took away from Burke's media, I can't remember if it was yesterday or when it was, but that it almost seemed like he was surprised at how aggressive they were, especially down the field, right? I think Oregon, but I don't want to say dink and dunk, because that would be a disservice to their offense, but it wasn't like they were just throwing deep shot after deep shot before the Ohio State game. Almost like maybe they were saving some of that. So I think he was a little surprised with how they, were attacking not just him, but they were attacking deep. Right. But that's twofold, right? One, that's game plan. I mean, even Ryan Day can say, yeah, we want to throw deep in this game, but if your offensive line sucks, you can't throw deep. Right. So, I mean, knowing the fact that Ohio State's defensive line didn't get a lot of pressure in that game, it definitely allowed Oregon to, to take some of those shots. And then Burke and others just weren't really ready. So to answer your question, I think he'll be better, because mathematically, I don't know how he could be worse, but I do expect Oregon to have some success throwing the ball, not because I'm doubting Burke per se, but just Oregon's got a really good pass offense, and they're going to throw for some yards tomorrow. I mean, I don't know what Ohio State's given up right now, 140 pass yards a game or whatever it is. Like, Oregon's going to do a hell of a lot better than that. They're an elite passing team.
Yeah, I mean, they carved Penn State up pretty well in the Big Ten championship. But to Penn State's credit, Oregon, they carved Oregon up the other way as well. Bucks have not allowed a single passing touchdown since that loss in October to Oregon. That'll be tested tomorrow night.
And that's okay, right? You just can't give up 3 or 4 of them, kind of thing. Like Oregon's, they're going to score some points. I think Ohio State's ready for that reality, and they need to be ready to counter and score some points as well.
Yeah, I mean, these games, when you have 2 elite teams, you're going to have to weather it and hope that you have more points at the end of the game.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to be 42 to 41. I don't think it's going to be that kind of game. Like I said, I already think it might be a little lesser scoring than the first matchup because these guys have seen each other and because I think Ohio State's defense is better now, like we just talked about. But I'd imagine there's going to be some back and forth. First game, you talked about how crazy the first half was and whatnot, but weaved into that was it seemed like the lead was changing every time somebody did score. I could see that, kind of being a situation tomorrow too.
Yeah, Bucks will want to try to limit big plays. Oregon had 8 plays of 20 plus, and that's a lot.
2.3 plays over 20 yards per game, I think. The rest of the season, or the season, if you just take Oregon out, and they gave up 8 of them in that game.
When Ohio State has the ball, can this third iteration of the offensive line pass another test? Because they struggled against Michigan, and they've kind of weren't great against Indiana at times, but they were really, really, really good against Tennessee.
Yeah, they were good against Tennessee for sure. I think a lot of that had as much to do with just how Ohio State tried to run the ball instead of, obviously what they did at Michigan was just a failed game plan. But some of those counters, some of those other things that we've seen, I think are helping the offensive line. And I was impressed with, Montgomery came in and, he certainly had some moments. His highlight obviously was on Trey's counter touchdown run where he completely buried his guy. I'm feeling more confident than I thought that I would. And I think another thing about this too is that we talked about with Michigan, the strength of Michigan's defensive line was the interior, which is Ohio State's weakness. We talked about with Tennessee, we felt a little bit better because Tennessee was a little stronger on the edges. Well, Oregon, I think, is stronger on the edges as well at defensive end, and Ohio State just matches up a little bit better. So
right.
Hopefully that's going to be part of, although Derek Harmon is no slouch, you talked about it just, stealing the ball from Judkins after he blew up a play to get in the backfield. But I'm hoping that, some of that game planning and just the actual one-on-one matchups will neutralize a little bit of what I think is Oregon's advantage on paper in the trenches.
Jordan Birch will be back for this one for Oregon. Did not play against Ohio State last time. 6'6", 295. What's he have? 8.5 sacks this season. Mateo Ugalele, the other end, man, he feasted on Ohio State in the last game. He's got 10 sacks this season. They got a really good line. Can Will Howard exact revenge? This is a game he's probably been thinking about forever. Probably thought it was going to happen in Indianapolis. It didn't, but he came up short on that last drive, slid, the play clock ran out. But other than that, played pretty well, man. That slide at the end kind of tainted his performance, man. But he said he's had nightmares about the game that, he threw for 326, 2 touchdowns, had a rushing touchdown. Oregon's got a really good defense, 8th nationally in pass defense for the season, but can he exact revenge? Yeah,
I guess we'll see. I'm fairly confident that he's going to have a good game. Like you said, he's been thinking about this one for a long time. He's coming off a really good game, and he had a lot of success against Oregon. He didn't throw back-to-back incompletions in that game until the last 2 passes of the Oregon game. So he's got to be feeling pretty good overall about what he can do against this defense, which is a really good defense to your point. But I'm pretty bullish on him being able. I think what's really going to be key is that, in the red zone, we talk about Will Howard as the quarterback, but I think Will Howard, the runner, is also going to be pretty important in these instances where Ohio State gets in the red zone. At least statistically, they've got an advantage over Oregon's offense with, how they perform in the red zone, where you're actually getting touchdowns. And in a matchup game like this, you get down in the red zone, you want to walk away with 7, not 3. And with just some of the inconsistency, obviously, with, Ohio State's field goal kicker on top of that, it makes it that much more important you find the end zone. So, I'm interested in, I think Will's going to be fine throwing the ball, but I'm interested to see, every game plan is different. how many carries might he have in this game, knowing that it could just look a little bit different. I think he had 9 carries in the first matchup. So will he be north of that this time? It wouldn't shock me.
When he does throw, he's got Jeremiah and Emeka, 2 guys that went off against Tennessee, 11 for 184 and 2 touchdowns combined on 13 targets. 19 for 193 and 2 touchdowns on 23 targets against Oregon. They played well that first game against Oregon. Yeah. They passed on them. And most importantly to me is like, what kind of game plan are we getting? You have to feel like some of the gap running, the gap blocking, and some of that stuff we saw against Tennessee, counter, RPO, gap scheme, some of that stuff's going to show up. And it's going to be more of that than for the fans that are still worried about a Michigan type game plan showing up.
Yeah, you would think so. You also know that, Oregon has watched you do that well. So you know that that's also what they're preparing for, right? They're preparing to see a lot of counter and some more RPO and some of those, real quick rollouts that are designed to almost be like running, to almost work like running plays. You're only expecting to get 4 or 5 yards on that throw, but you'll take it kind of thing. I mean, how many of those, I think, what did Paloha say on his recap of Howard's night against Tennessee? I feel like 9 of Howard's passes were behind the line of scrimmage, and that was a season high. So will you see some more of that kind of stuff, or hey, is that kind of sucking them up to go a little bit deeper? We'll see. It's gonna be interesting to see. I mean, it's gonna be a fascinating matchup because for all those things that Ohio State did well, Oregon watched that happen, and they're going to be trying to scheme, to stop that. That's what, one of the main reasons Lanning is there. So yeah, it's really going to be exciting to see, but yeah, either way, I do think aggressive game plan is the point of that, right? Whatever that looks like, playing to win instead of playing not to lose. I have to believe we'll see a continuation of doing that against, like they did against Tennessee, but will it look exactly the same? I guess we'll find out tomorrow.
Intangibles touched on how nice it'll be not to be playing in Outson. You got my respect, Tiny Stadium. I didn't want to give it out, but you have my respect. And then, some interesting ones here is like, is it hard to beat a team twice in one season? Like, how does that, I mean, it just doesn't happen much in college football. You see some of it in conference championship games here or there, but I'm trying to think of the last time Ohio State played a team twice. Do you know, you have the top of your head?
No, I don't.
Cause like, I don't think it's any of the recent Big Ten championship game opponents. Like I'm happy to dig deep, but like it's rare. Like I can't even think off the top of my head when that might've been.
Do you put a lot of stock in it, especially with the first one being October? I guess I'm just trying to think of like, okay, how much does this really matter? I mean, both teams have the tape on each other, and
it's a new game. I get what you're saying. It's a new game.
Ohio State's offensive line's retooled, and therefore some of the, and we talked about the defense, right? Some of the stuff they're doing up front is different now, as a catalyst of what happened in the Oregon game the first time around. So maybe Oregon hasn't changed as much. I won't sit here and pretend to know. I've watched a lot of their games, but not intently the way I watch Ohio State games. I guess that'd be one thing I would say is that I do think Ohio State was probably more likely to be a different team in round 1 than they are in round 2. Oregon may end up being a little bit more similar to what they were in round 1. You got Birch back. But other than that, maybe it wouldn't, they're probably pretty similar to what they look like then.
Yeah, a bunch of little stuff too. Like, I mean, if you're Jack or JTT or Tyleek or someone, you're thinking, man, we didn't get any sacks. We have to get sacks this game. So you're probably trying to go a little harder. I mean, if you weren't, and then maybe I don't know, I'm throwing this out there. I don't know how realistic it is, but if you're Dylan Gabriel, hey man, I carved these guys up. I had 350. Their cornerbacks were easy to beat. Maybe you're taking this one. You're coming in with an attitude like, they can't stop me throwing. So maybe something happens.
If he wasn't
there.
40 years old, maybe. But I mean, you said like these old quarterbacks. That
he's still 24 though. He's not like he's still 20. He's old for a quarterback in college. He's still young and dumb in the grand scheme of things. What about playing already? Does it benefit Ohio State to already have a game in the books while Oregon's sitting home for 25 days?
I do like that, but it's just all on how if you've got the magic formula to prepare. But we've obviously have been scarred by some Ohio State long layoffs, before games. So maybe that's me making too much of it because of that. But I do like especially knowing that they came out of the game with no injuries or anything like that, to say, I do think it's probably good that they played a serious game, leading up to this one, whereas Oregon's been, I guess that said though, Oregon played the week after when Ohio State was sitting at home. So
true. Yeah, but just recency though. Like
it's a longer, for sure, a longer layoff. Yeah.
And no matter how good your practices are, it's hard to simulate games.
Yeah. Just saying, at least they played a game in December, but yeah, I'd definitely give Ohio State a little bit of an advantage there of playing more recently.
Yeah, it'll be a fun one. Again, that's tomorrow at 5 p.m. A little bit of stealth promo, man. I threw this in. You see a lot of data on podcasts and shows where viewers or listeners kind of trail off over time. Like a lot of people are listening. And you can see a very similar graph probably to most, or chart to most shows. We're trying to make sure this show is interesting enough to where you don't do that. So if you've made it this far in the show, shoot us an email to contact@11warriors.com, letting us know you made it this far. And we're going to send a free tee from 11 Warriors Dry Goods to the first person to email us. What do you think? You think we'll get one?
Yeah, we'll get one.
Getting into some of these other games, and we're going to talk about, because like the next, I don't know, tonight we've got a game that's incredible. I got 3 big ones, quarterfinal games tomorrow. So a lot of football on tap, but ESPN and the CFP, like there's some weird stuff kind of coming to fruition this year that it was kind of always there, but now like national fans are starting to be like, what the hell? And the gist of it to me is that the college football playoff has an ESPN problem. And we're in the midst of the greatest expansion of our beloved sport in decades. You got more opportunity, home playoff games, a larger field, more meaningful games in the season. We should be celebrating this, but ESPN has just been salty as hell, from talent on air to you name it, because notably 3-loss Alabama and 3-loss Ole Miss of the SEC didn't make the field. Of course, we kind of saw this in the second half of the Notre Dame-Indiana game when Notre Dame was in control, and ESPN's Sean McDonough basically spent like 10 minutes questioning whether Indiana deserved to be in the field. Why the 11-1 Big Ten team got the benefit of the doubt over ACC or SEC programs. Of course, Paul Feinbaum said much of the same a day or so later. And then Kirk Herbstreit actually went on SportsCenter, and he actually said this, quote, "I hope that next year the committee won't get caught up with the social media and a lot of people who are fringe fans get caught up with, which is wins." and everyone in college football is like, well, what the hell, dude? Like literally said this. Herbstreit saying, don't pay attention to wins. He went on to say, quote, "Indiana having 11 wins and beating nobody doesn't mean they're one of the 12 best teams. There's a big difference between deserving and best." And a lot to untangle here. ESPN is a sole media rights to the CFP all the way through the 2031-32 season. They're paying about $1.3 billion a year for that. Incidentally, they're in the first year of a 10-year SEC deal valued about $300 million annually as well. So to me, this is like a blatant conflict of interest. And, you know, a lot of things are happening here. They're stumping for SEC teams. It's gotten pretty bad to where everyone's pushing back on it. That's not, even some SEC fans are like, man, chill. Like, you know, Alabama fans like, hey, we lost to bad Oklahoma. What are you doing here? But, you know, these playoff games aren't guaranteed to be close. CFP games before, it was a 12-team field and it was a 4-team. Many of those games weren't close. Wild card games in the NFL, those are sometimes lopsided. I mean, you see like a 23-0 wild card game every season in the NFL, and you don't say, oh, we should blow it up. And why didn't we invite this team that didn't qualify because they would have made a better game? It just doesn't happen. And, you know, I think, Chris, you have some people that think that, you know, ESPN can remain unbiased. But, you know, let's be real. Even like our hard news channels lean a certain way politically. There's no one unbiased in America anymore. And the E in ESPN stands for entertainment. We're supposed to believe that they're going to be unbiased. You know, this is like once upon a time, it was maybe like a fringe OSU fan theory. Like, you know, we've lived this, Buckeye fans, and like unfavorable treatment. ESPN loves the SEC. But, you know, I'm a big hockey fan, you know, a big NHL fan. I lived through ESPN not having the NHL deal for about 15 years. And during that time, it wasn't a sport. You didn't see highlights on SportsCenter. There were no shows dedicated to it. 2 years ago, they get the NHL back as a broadcast partner. And hey, there's highlights on SportsCenter again. So like this fantasy to think that they're going to be unbiased is, to me, just like, I don't know. It's a blatant conflict of interest. There's a famous quote, right? It's difficult for someone to understand something when their salary depends on them not understanding it. And that's kind of what's at play. But Chris, thankfully, like the internet's hammering ESPN. Like Nick is getting roasted. Alabama Jones is getting roasted for the first time in a long time. Kirk Herbstreit's had a rough couple weeks with fans of like, even like no dogs in the fight, or like, dude, what's this guy on? What's this all about? McDonough got blasted for that tangent he went on in that game. what do we do here? Like, is it, you don't see this in the NFL. You don't have like NBC or you don't have like Fox saying, oh, the AFC shouldn't get anyone in the playoffs. Like, it's so stupid. Like, on one hand, it's stupid, but like, it's also the regionalness is kind of what makes a sport like zany and fun too. So what do we do?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest thing to do is that none of that changes if the bottom line, like the financial bottom line, doesn't change for any of the networks or people that are involved in that stuff. So, not talking about it, not watching it is the main thing you probably have to do. But who's willing to do that, right? So,
right.
I mean, that's how you do something about it this day and age. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is what it is, and I will say, I think like Herbie's whole point, it's tricky because I think wins have to matter. Like, do not sit here and say I'm saying wins don't matter, because they do. But I also think like there are scenarios where there are teams that, are not as good as their record might indicate because they didn't play anybody. So it's how do you reconcile that? In the NFL, you don't really have to worry about it because there's divisions and they're all this, and this is the way it is. And, and you're good. Here, there's still so much subjectivity to it that you just have to build firmer and firmer rules about how you qualify if you want to take out the subjectivity, right? That's all you can do. Because right now it's, hey, rank the 12 teams, and especially next year after they get rid of the, the automatic guaranteed bye for the highest rated because they're going to get rid of that. Once they do that, then you're going to have that much more subjectivity to say, hey, who's better than who, kind of thing. So until you can have some very serious guardrails, which they don't want to do either, to say, you know what? Top 4 teams are the only 4 that can get in. SEC, you figure out who your top 4 are. Big Ten, you get like, unless they do something like that, which is kind of doing what somewhat what the NFL does. How many times in the NFL has a shitty team won the division, they get in the playoffs? It's just, there's nothing to argue about. It's a rule. It's not somebody's opinion, right? So until some of that stuff is removed, which I don't know is necessarily best for college football, because there's not as much to talk about. Then you're going to have these things happen. But as far as a conflict of interest, I mean, that's, it's not unique to ESPN. Like you said, we're talking about it here because we're talking about college football, but whether it's politics or anything else, people are going to prop up what is best for their own rooting interest or financial interest. That's just the way it works. I mean, some car salesman that's selling you a Tesla is not telling you, gosh, gas powered vehicles are the way to go, Jason. I mean, it's not shocking.
Yeah, I mean, I almost think you need to break up the TV deal and give like 4 games to ESPN, 4 to NBC, 4 to someone else, something like that. And here I thought, like, I think we're going to get to 16. I think 16 is going to happen pretty quickly. I think they'll fix the bye thing you mentioned first, but I do think we'll get to 16 pretty quickly. Here I thought,
does some of that go away? Hold on. Does some of that go away with 16 though? Because I mean, like we talked about before, if you're like the 13th best, I'm already like, whatever, tough shit. Yeah, like I don't care when anybody's mad that Alabama didn't make it.
Yeah, should have lost
you
to
start
home in
getting to
Kentucky.
16 and 17, you're talking about some mid teams.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, it satisfies probably getting 4 teams in from the Big Ten and the SEC while still allowing all the other teams that should get in to get in. Like, I mean,
how much more crying can you do at ESPN if you've got your 4 SECs in there?
Yeah. And here I thought, like when it was 4 teams, like the 5th team had they had big beef because like a 5th team's a pretty good team. And here I was like, okay, 13, just shut up, because it's like the March Madness. Like no one wants to hear from 69. Okay, you should have won 1 more game instead of like finishing 69th and not getting in. So, but ESPN has amplified this, and Southern football fans have amplified, hey, why isn't Alabama in? Why isn't this happening? And they've got to have to get it fixed, man. It's a blatant conflict of interest, I think, that kind of hurts ESPN's credibility. Speaking of these games, man, let's talk about those. More fun topic. We got tonight, 7:30. New Year's plans for every college football junkie on earth. Like, people are like, you going out, man? We're going, no, man, there's a great game on. I'm not going anywhere.
I don't want to go anywhere anyway. So
I'm watching this game and doing that and nothing else. The Fiesta Bowl, featuring number 6 Penn State, number 3 Boise State. Penn State's favored by 11. First playoff appearance for each team. For James Franklin, kind of the poster child for expansion. Finally gets a crack. They blew out SMU in the first round, 38-10 in Happy Valley. That was fun to see. And they bring the nation's number 4 rush defense to this game. Held 9 opponents to fewer than 100 yards team rushing. They're going to need it because if you know nothing else about Boise State, Heisman runner-up Ashton Genty's on that team, and he's about 2,500 yards for the season. No big deal. Just kind of like a ho-hum, decent year. Like, that's a monster year. 29 touchdowns, 2,497 rushing yards. Who do you like in this game? Is it simple enough to say it's Penn State because they're such heavy favorites?
I think it's Penn State, but I do, if I was betting on it, I might flirt with Boise to cover. I don't know. Penn State on offense is just boring. I mean, I don't think they're going to light it up. I'm still stunned with what they did against Oregon. Yeah. SMU, I kind of just throw out anyway. But yeah, I think Penn State will win this game, but I'm not expecting, I would imagine the games are going to get a little tighter. Like, everybody crying about the blowouts in the first round, but I do think we'll see less of that moving forward here, obviously. And I wouldn't be surprised if this one's a little closer than most people are expecting.
1 p.m. on ESPN.
Did you say who you got? Are you as simple as it's Penn State?
I think Penn State's going to cover pretty easily. I think that, Boise's pretty one-dimensional. But, Boise played Morgan tough, so maybe I'll look stupid here in a couple of days. Or I guess tomorrow after the game. 1 p.m. ESPN, you got the Peach Bowl, number 5 Texas, number 4 Arizona State. Texas favored by 13, another big line. Quinn Ewers a little bit banged up in the ankle. They've, of course, got Manning on the bench. Texas run game's clicking, man. Almost 300 yards rushing against Clemson after being a pass-first team most of the season. Arizona State got the white running back, man, Cam Skattebo. Like, this dude at Media Day said, quote, "There's nobody out there that can stop me," and I freaking love that swagger. He's got about 1,600 yards on the season, 19 touchdowns. Arizona State's played a SEC team this year. He put up 262 on Mississippi State, so he's already been there and done that. Not to say Mississippi State's great, but the only time he's faced an SEC team, he almost popped a 300 spot on him. And that's not enough. Quarterback Sam Levitt of Arizona State, he's on the record saying he wants to prove he's a better quarterback than you are. So in terms of like shit talking, like Arizona State might be the team to beat in the shit talking category. I don't know if that's going to be worth 13 points, what the line is there. They got a hell of a coach. Kenny Dillingham's an awesome coach. He's done great things out there for his alma mater. I think most of the country are probably rooting for Arizona State. Kind of like if Ohio State was playing Arizona State, like the whole country would be cheering for Arizona State except for Buckeye fans. So probably some of that at play, but do you think they cover? Texas does?
I don't know. Texas offense hasn't been really good. You mentioned Ewers being a little bit banged up. Obviously, Texas defense, people feel pretty good about the studs they got over there. But I don't know. Arizona State's had it going, man. I mean, what'd you say, 11-2? And I feel like they didn't have their quarterback for at least one of those. So that's another one I feel like Texas will win. I think Sark, I like Dillingham, but I think just schematically, not to pull out the Charlie Weiss, but I think Texas probably has an advantage in just game planning for this game kind of thing, but just experience and whatever else. But I wouldn't be surprised if Arizona State hangs around a little bit. I think Texas wins, but be another one. I wouldn't be surprised if Arizona State kind of backdoor covered.
I do think Texas wins, but Arizona State covers, and I'll be cheering for Arizona State. You see Jake Plummer? Jake Plummer with the ceremonial coin toss. That's got to be some good vibes for the Sun Devils. At 5 o'clock, Ohio State plays in the Rose Bowl against Oregon. I've got that one, Ohio State 33-21. I think 33-21. Maybe it's 31-21.
Yeah, I feel like you turned in something 31-22 or something like that.
31-22. That's right. Yeah.
I think that's what it was. Yeah, I took Ohio State 28-27. But gosh, man, I flirted up until the moment I hit enter. I had Oregon 30-28 typed in. And then I literally changed it at the last second and flipped it around because I feel like this is going to be a lot like the first game where it's whoever has the ball last will probably have a chance to win the game. But yeah, I went Ohio State 28, Oregon 27.
I love Ohio State's defense. This time of the year, I want to ride that defense. It's the best defense in the country, in my opinion.
That was my blurb to Andy was Ohio State's red zone defense does enough for Ohio State to escape.
Nightcap tomorrow, 8:45 p.m. All-State Sugar Bowl, number 7 Notre Dame, number 2 Georgia. Again, Carson Beck is out. He's heading to the NFL. Gunnar Stockton in. Kirby saying nice things that Notre Dame is built like an SEC team with their physicality on both lines. Notre Dame's won 11 straight, man, most by blowout since that shocking Week 2 loss to NIU. Wouldn't that be something if Georgia, of all teams, is the first team to like let Notre Dame get over the hump and beat a really elite SEC team. Georgia's favored by 1.5. I was a little surprised by that. I expect Notre Dame to win this game. I don't know if I'm crazy there or what, but backup quarterback, Georgia's kind of like Jekyll and Hyde half this season. I think Notre Dame wins the game. I think they probably win it by about 7 to 10 points too.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm a little closer than that. But, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if, 28-24, 24-20, somewhere in there. But, yeah, I like Notre Dame to win as well.
I hate it, too, because Kyle Jones was trying to tell us a couple weeks ago before the Indiana game that Notre Dame was legit. I'm like, I need to see it before I put it in here. Because, we've the last 20 years, they've sucked in December and January. So it's like they need to feel like they're kind of earning a little bit. If they win this game, I'll come to terms and say Notre Dame's legit. But I had to see it first. All right, folks, it's time for our favorite part of the show. What's your price? We dive into the things in life we could do for the right price. We're talking about the fun, harmless stuff that doesn't hurt anyone or break the bank, like driving 10 miles under the speed limit for an entire year or entering a professional slap contest. What's your price? Oregon is the opponent this week. Pacific Northwest is beautiful. But there's like a Bill Burr bit when he's out at Red Rocks in Denver, when he's kind of roasting everyone in Denver for like dressing like they're going to be hiking at any moment, but like no one ever hikes. Like it's a vibe. And I feel like the Pacific Northwest, particularly Portland, Eugene, has that vibe as well. Everyone's looking like got their sweetest hiking boots on, got some flannels, got some pockets, maybe has an ISO mat in the back of their car just in case. And no one ever hikes. Like it's like 1% of the people actually get out and do it. So this week, what's your price to run a full marathon in a pair of Birkenstock sandals? I feel like there's a couple things at play here. The first part is like, I need money just to run the marathon. Like you give me the sweetest shoes possible. You give me some Nike like lab design. No one's worn these. You
give me like rollerblades.
Yeah, right. You give me a bicycle, and I'm like, that's 26 miles. Still, I need a motorcycle. I need the engine here. So there's a couple components to play. First is to get you to train and run the marathon. Say you got 6 months to train, and then to run the whole thing in Birkenstocks, and how busted up your feet are going to be, and like how much you can be hating life for like the 48 to 72 hours after the marathon.
A bit longer than that, but yeah.
You think so? Like a month to recover? He's not seeing people yet. He's still on the couch.
Are these like brand new out of the box, or are these like some broken in Birkenstock?
Does it matter?
I mean,
I guess if they're broken in a little bit,
I haven't had a pair since I was like 18, but I just remember it took a minute for your feet sweat to get into them and the straps to stop irritating you. And yeah.
Okay. You can have them. They're broken in. Whatever. Yep. And you can even wear like some heavy, like hippie wool socks with them.
Oh man, I don't even want. Yeah, the whole just marathon bit in and of itself is a problem. Very problematic.
Yeah, I guess that's the interesting question. Like, what's your price to run a marathon, and then what's the surcharge to run in Berks? I'm gonna come right out of the gates, man. I'm gonna just say I'm gonna need $10,000.
No,
and I feel like that's a lot. I feel like 21-year-old me would say, "Give me $500, I'll make this work." But I'm old now. And like I could die running a marathon at my age, especially in Birkenstocks. Like break something where I could never play hockey again, or like have to walk with a cane. Like, I mean, there's like some concerns I have at my age, right?
Yeah, break some feet. Yeah, I'd probably have to try to do like that fast walking, like the Olympic.
Yeah,
you're not slamming down.
Well, that's the thing too. Like maybe you can walk it. Maybe that's part of the rules here. But like if you walk 26 miles, it's gonna take you like 14 hours, man.
I don't know. It's gonna take me that long anyway. You think I'm gonna keep up some jogging pace for 26 miles?
If you train for a while, you might be able to run it in like 6 or something, right? Don't like the really good guys run in like 3?
Yeah, like 2.5 or something.
Yeah. So you might be able to like at a decent pace run it in 6. But that's literally running from like 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. straight.
Awful.
Or 8 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Yeah, 10,000 doesn't seem bad. I mean, because, it's not just frankly, it's not just the 6 hours work. I don't want to prepare for a marathon either.
You wouldn't go to cold turkey? You wouldn't be like, hey, let me just show up and run this?
I thought you were acting like we had to, or you said.
I'm saying you have the opportunity to. You don't have to. You can do whatever you want.
I don't want to do that. Yeah.
So you would just show up and try to run it, just raw dog it, just raw dog a marathon. Let's see how that goes. You better put some of that money aside for hospital bills.
On those Birks on my elbows by the end of it, like just trying to crawl and not skin my elbows too bad.
Just like the buckles digging in on your side of your foot. You're bleeding. Clock. You're just clogging the whole way.
Stop a couple miles, have a banana, and do some hacky sacking.
Yep. You get a 13-mile mark, you get to put on a fresh pair of Birks. I can't think of anything worse to run. I mean, like there probably are worse things. Like straight up flip flops would probably be worse. But
like gas station flip flops.
Yeah, there's not much. It's worse in terms of running a marathon than just Birkenstocks.
$10,000 seems like a pretty good number, man. I'm trying to decide if I'm high or low. It's that ballpark, but
so you definitely not going for $5?
More than $5. No. It's at least got to be 5 figures. Any medical bills that you incur afterward? Are they coming out of what's your price, or is that assumed?
It's pure. Let's just say it's pure prize money. You get to keep it, and then basically medical bills are paid elsewhere. Are you planning on medical bills? I think like you can try it. You could probably try it in some Birks and get it done. 8 hours.
If I did a marathon in the best pair of Nikes I own, I still feel like I might have some medical bills afterward. Maybe. Especially if I go with my model of I'm just showing up and doing this. I'm not preparing for it for months. I'm going to say 15,000.
15. Yeah. I think I'd do 10. I think it'd be. I don't want to do it. I'd probably, if like the moment came, I'd demand 25 or something, like on the spot. I'd like, wait. But for right now, I'm going to say 10. I'm going to say 10, even though that feels a little bit low. Like, I feel like someone could call your bluff for 10. Be like, all right, let's see it.
I'll stick with 15.
15. There are going to be pictures of you like in the race website with the Birks, like slobber all over your face and just like
puke all down the front of my shirt.
Kids pointing at you on the race course, like, what's wrong with that
guy's marathoners? Shoes? If they have to poop, they'll just do it, right? Like Greta Weitz in the New York City Marathon all those years ago.
What about these ultra marathon dudes that run like 50 and 100-mile marathons? Like, how deranged in the head do you have to be to run a 100-mile marathon?
Just straight up weirdos. So
$10K for me, $15K for you to run a marathon in some Birkenstock sandals. All right. That's doable. It's an aspiration to get there one day. Hey, thanks for watching today, tuning in. We had a blast. As always, take care of each other. Be good to each other. Go Bucks.